Welcome to the Mill. I'm very excited to be joined by Stephanie Baxter, a very dear friend of mine. Stephanie, thank you so much for being with us today. Stephanie's pronouns are she, her, and hers. She's a collaborative leader, is deeply passionate about driving growth and achieving excellence in all aspects of her work. With decades of experience in customer service, sales, event management, and marketing, she has honed her skills to perfection, consistently driving revenue growth, enhancing customer retention, and mentoring the next generation of professionals. Stephanie's unwavering dedication to the mission of the organizations she works with guides her decision making, adopting a results driven approach that yields outstanding outcomes for her teams and clients. Her keen attention to detail and ability to identify opportunities for improvement set her apart as a leader, making a remarkable impact on the organizations she serves. And Stephanie is currently with the New Hampshire Tech Alliance. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for having me. This is so great. That was such a nice intro. Thank you.
I know. I wish I could like enter a room and people would immediately be like, and this is Rachel Ballatori. Rachel is the mother of 3 dogs because she's crazy and doesn't like free time. You know, so nice.
Absolutely.
So good to have you. I'm very excited to dive into a couple questions. And, Mill & Co. obviously loves being, in cahoots with the Tech Alliance. I love going to the events. I love that I had the opportunity to speak in January of 2023 at the Tech Breakfast. That was really great. But I want to talk about your work specifically with the Tech Alliance. Can you just kind of describe what your role is as the Director of Programming and Engagement? What are your responsibilities and what's driving your passion to be promoting tech in the state of New Hampshire?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as Director of Programming and Engagement, I oversee all of our events. So, we have over 30 events over the course of the year, some virtual, mostly in person now. I also oversee our membership as well. So, the Tech Alliance is an association for the tech industry in New Hampshire. So, companies and remote individuals and retired individuals all participate as members. And it's my role to make them, we help companies get the word out about what they're doing. There's a lot of innovation happening in New Hampshire that a lot of people don't know about, and some people aren't great at telling their story. So we try to be the cheerleaders, the megaphone of New Hampshire, and promote what everybody's doing. And my role is that kind of middle piece of, you know, providing all the engagement opportunities, making introductions, connecting people, kind of helping businesses in any way that they need it, really.
Yeah.
And the reason I have this job is actually an interesting story. So I grew up in Manchester, New Hampshire, went to school in Boston, and after graduation, stayed in the city, met my husband, stayed in Massachusetts for about a decade. And as we were trying to buy a home, we were looking for some more space and where are we going to live? And he's a software engineer.
Mm.
I am a hospitality events background person. I am not a tech person, but we were considering, the middle of Massachusetts there, the 495 belt, and I wanted to move to New Hampshire to be closer to family.
Mm.
My husband did not. After many years of negotiation, we decided to stay in Massachusetts. And
Yeah.
then I ran a road race up and went from Loudon to the State House. It was a half marathon. And my husband was a good little doobie and drove all around to different parts to cheer me on. And if you've ever been up in that area, it's a really scenic route. It's really pretty, very nature, wooded, lots of
Yeah.
trees. And the next day, he's like, "Why don't we move to Concord?" And I
Why
was
don't we?
why don't we? And I was like pushing for Hudson, New Hampshire, which is like a minute
Um,
over the border. And I was like, my sister is in Concord, like my family's close by. I was like, do not talk to me for 1 month until you think about this. Also, you won't have a job in New Hampshire.
yeah.
So you're in
Yeah.
tech, you're a software developer, you'll never have a job in New Hampshire. There's no tech in New
Mm.
Hampshire. Go away from me. So a month later, he comes back. He's like, "No, I really like it up there. We were looking for more space and nature and all of that." So we
Yeah.
moved here, and as all Massachusetts transplants do, worked remote for 2 years.
Yeah.
And then I had to get out of the house. I'm like, I can't be a remote person again, hospitality background. So I got a job at the Union Leader managing their events and a little bit of their marketing as well. And it was a great way to get a look at the state and what is happening and what types of businesses are here. And sure
Mm.
enough, there's tech in New Hampshire. so much had changed in that 15 years I was gone. Like, that's not a long time for
Yeah.
the amount of change that happened in downtown Manchester, especially.
Mm,
So it was shocking. And then I came across the Tech Alliance and fell in love with it and started volunteering. And then
mm,
once a job became available, I knew this is what I wanted to do. I
mm.
want my kids, very selfishly, to go away and experience something, but know there's good jobs to come home to if this is where they want to raise their family. So I'm very passionate about that, and that's why I work at the Tech Alliance.
I love that whole story. I love everything about it. And it's so interesting. I'm from Rochester, New York. I only moved to Manchester in, my gosh, what was it? October 2021.
Hmm.
And I'm like, New Hampshire is not a diverse state.
Mm,
In terms of people, population, owned businesses, like there aren't,
hmm.
people, person of color owned businesses, woman owned
Hmm.
businesses. There's not a lot of tech here. In my mind, I had just decided this is what the state of New Hampshire was. And boy, was I
Yeah.
wrong. And I was very happy to be wrong because I was apprehensive about moving here because of those things.
Hmm.
After living in Manhattan, Philadelphia, Boston, you're in these amazing places with incredible people and innovation and inclusivity, diversity. And I was like, Manchester, New Hampshire. Well, I'm in love. So I guess I'm going to move. But I was so excited to find the Tech Alliance. I remember the exact moment a few years ago. I was Googling like tech events in the
Hmm.
space because obviously Mill and Co. And we want to work with a lot of innovative companies, startups, or companies that have been around for a long time that are looking for a rebrand, a refresh. Maybe they're trying to target a new audience, and just a happy accident stumbled into a New Hampshire Tech Alliance event, and I went to the first one. I think it was a Product of the Year award was the
Mm.
first
Oh,
one,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah. I remember meeting you
I'm
there.
in.
Yep. Hmm.
Yeah, well over a year ago now, and
Yeah.
yeah, I like fell in love. It was so
Hmm.
exciting to be around a like-minded group of people. It felt very diverse. I felt included from the minute I walked into that event to all the people that I met with and connected with from the event. Um, I think it's really incredible to create these support groups and
Yeah.
networks that are they're broad enough that a lot of different types of tech companies can still fit within that. Like we
Hmm.
fit within that, even though we're an ad agency. um, but tighten it enough that you really feel like you recognize faces when you go to these events and you get to see a lot of the same people while also meeting new people. So it's speaking from
Yeah.
as a member, it has been a really lovely experience for me.
Yeah, and I think it really, you've lived in other states. Networking is not like it is here, right? Like it is that welcoming environment. Your people are just willing to meet up for coffee or get
Yeah.
to know a new person or tell them, you're new to the city, great. This is where you should eat. This is where,
Right.
you should shop or anything like that. And it's really a very different networking experience than anything I experienced living in Massachusetts for sure. People are much more open to those connections, which is great.
I started a networking series that's based on that called Table Talk, as you know, because
Sure do.
I have been to my fair share of business card slinging,
Yeah.
kind of slimy feeling networking events that are very competitive, and you leave and you're like, did I meet enough people for my own personal gain? And I just don't think that's a really good way to do business. I don't
Yeah.
think it's a good way to network. I do not think that provides value to anyone, yourself included. So
Hmm.
love that we have that in common. And in
Hmm.
addition to the work that you're doing for the Tech Alliance, you're also running a networking group for event professionals in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
not continuously bite off more than we can chew here, Stephanie? So, A, tell me about this, and then
Sure.
B, how do you feel like there's any overlap, with the work that
Hmm.
you're doing at the Alliance?
Yeah. I mean, it all for me comes back to community.
Mm,
In Massachusetts, there's an association for everything. So I was in an association for event professionals, and they would host monthly education and networking sessions. And I loved it. I love to keep learning. I love to make new connections. And, everything is the New England chapter in
mhm,
Boston, right? So
mhm,
once I moved up to Concord, I was not going to drive to Boston for networking. Didn't make sense.
right.
Didn't want to do that. So it took me a while to get the courage to just start a group, and was actually inspired by another group called Women in Sales New Hampshire. And I
Mhm.
started attending their events because I always have like a business development part to my role just so I could learn more. And I'm like, oh, these women just started this. Like, you can just start something and just do it. Like, it just did not occur to me.
Yeah. Yep.
And yeah, at the time, I was at the union leader and I was our community, did all of our community relations. So I had a lot of connections with nonprofits and other
Mhm.
businesses amongst the state, and plus our own event venues and vendors that we use. And I'm like, all these people are in my inbox.
Yeah.
And as an event professional, like especially in New Hampshire, where company sizes are much smaller, you're very
Mhm.
likely the only person in your company. So you don't really have anyone who understands what you do. It's very hard for people to help you troubleshoot, even though everyone thinks they know what they're doing.
Mhm.
Um, so I wanted that community. I wanted a space for us to all understand each other, provide resources, just make new connections and all of that. So I decided to just start it one day. So I did start it, and it. I think it's directly related to the tech alliance because I'm always looking to make community at the tech alliance
Right.
for the tech industry, especially for the tech industry where
Yeah.
people are likely to work remote. They are comfortable being in their homes or in the
Mhm.
office, so trying to find ways for them to engage. And I think of both of those things on the same playing field.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree, and I remember when I first moved to New Hampshire, I'd been in major cities for forever, since college when I was in Baltimore. Baltimore to Rochester to Manhattan to Philly to Boston, and then I moved to Manchester, New Hampshire. And I remember a part of me was still very actively looking at events,
Mhm.
innovation spaces, dinners, opportunities in Massachusetts and in Boston. And what's so interesting is I just assumed that I couldn't get that in New Hampshire. So I
Yeah.
found myself kind of going down to Mass to get what I thought I needed. And so it's interesting because you've got Boston, Cambridge, major tech hubs,
Hmm.
major, not only from like the academic side, but a lot of businesses that are there. I mean, it is they're known for that. Does that enhance the tech opportunities and companies and networking in New Hampshire? Does it compete with it? Does it not matter at all?
I think it's a little bit of everything. I won't say it competes. I don't. New Hampshire will never be what Boston is. New Hampshire will never be Silicon Valley. But I think since the pandemic, especially, we're n- we're not that far away, and I think they're realizing that too. We know that.
You're like peeking
Um,
over the shoulder, like, oh,
yeah, exactly. And what we've seen a lot is, especially from a startup perspective, it's a lot
mm-hmm.
more affordable to have an office in New Hampshire or rent lab space in New Hampshire.
Right.
But networking down there, you can live in New Hampshire and just have this huge access to all of these people in the Boston area, but you can still live in New Hampshire and have that quality of life or base your business here.
Hmm.
So it really, and I think in the past couple of years too, we've been working to strengthen those connections. It's certainly, there's a lot going on down there. We're never going to try to compete. It would be impossible, and that's fine. But, we all have our own niche,
Yeah.
and how we can support what they're doing. And, it's for us, it's providing resources, and they have a ton of resources and a ton of events that we would never be able to do at the scale they do, and the amount of
Yeah.
connections. So happy to promote those and let startups, entrepreneurs, businesses know, this event's going on, or you can get this resource down there. And then it's been I think, more surprising on the opposite end. Like they're just realizing that New Hampshire exists
Yeah.
in the tech space for
Yeah.
sure. So a lot of those conversations are like, "Oh, I didn't know that about New Hampshire." And,
Yeah.
the Build Back Better grant through Army and the city of Manchester has really kinda kicked that into gear a bit in the life
Mhm.
sciences space. People in Boston have really started to catch on to that, so we're seeing a lot more activity from there, which is great because it helps the whole state, and other people
Yeah.
coming in like, "I heard about this," and, like, maybe they don't need the life sciences thing, but they're like, "If there's this, there must be something else," and can start that conversation, so,
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think the whole mill yard is the Silicon Valley of New
yeah.
Hampshire,
Mhm.
which is very
Absolutely.
exciting. So there's a statistic that nationally, women in tech represent only 26%
Mhm.
of people in tech. And New Hampshire stands just shy of that at 25%
Mhm.
are women in tech represented in the state of New Hampshire. Why do you think that that's so low? And how can we do better? How can we get above the national average in the state?
So, from a tech, I have a lot of personal thoughts about this. I will
Please
talk
share.
about the Tech Alliance thoughts first. I think just, women, any diverse population, if you're not seeing yourself represented, it's hard to understand that those things are options for you.
Mm,
So at the Tech Alliance, we really try to lean into telling the stories of women in tech and at least getting the word out there and just trying to promote women as much as possible. So we do a monthly video series featuring a woman in tech, what her story is, biggest challenges, like all different questions. It's really fun. We do Tech Power Breakfast, which feature only female speakers in the tech space, which are great events, and anyone's welcome to attend, male or female or any gender, does not matter. You should come and hear these fabulous women speak. And then our Tech Women Awards. So each year we present a tech educator of the year, a tech student of the year, and a tech professional of the year. So trying to highlight those stories, we tend to get a lot of press on them, which is great. So we're really leaning into that storytelling piece to just
mhm.
get more and more people out there. I think, from a company perspective, I think that companies need to be really cognizant of what is happening in their own space, make sure that there is mentorship. And it doesn't need to be female to female, right? Like men can mentor female people and introduce them to their networks. There's a lot
Yep.
of opportunity there. And I think about that. So my daughter is 9, and I'm seeing through her eyes, like my education experience to hers, right? And like I grew up in the 90s, and it was fun. Like I never felt like I couldn't do science or tech or anything, but like it's not how my brain works for sure. But
Yeah.
there's so many opportunities now for her if she chooses to participate in them. But I think what I see in her is sometimes some women, right, are a little bit more reserved, a
Mhm.
little more likely to stay quiet. And I think that is the piece within a company and like what we can do from an education point of view, kind of draw that out, like make sure they
Mhm.
are being included and are given opportunities to lead a
Mhm.
project or whatever it is. Sometimes I think that can be overlooked. And I think that's probably a little bit more of a female trait than a male trait. Obviously, I'm not stereotyping everybody.
Yeah.
Um, so I think about that a lot, from that perspective and just making sure that kids are given not only access to STEM and tech and all the different things, but kind of that personal development piece too, to really stand on their own.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think there's two major factors happening and then a lot of other semi-major factors happening, but number one, I'm pleased to see that there is a much more of a focus on STEM initiatives for younger kids, for them to know from a very early age, oh, this is out there, this exists. I have opportunities for this. Or places like the Sea Science Center
Mm,
getting funding so that they can reach into any sort of community, particularly in underserved communities,
yeah.
and bring children in to be exposed to science, math,
Hmm.
engineering, um, tech.
Hmm.
So for sure, there has to be a focus. And so I think companies that are in the state of New Hampshire take some ownership. It's a call to action for you right now. Take some ownership on what can I be doing to enhance and bring STEM and STEAM opportunities to younger kids to start to
Hmm.
build a new generation of more people in this space. And then the second piece I look at, and this is a big issue that I hope we can overcome someday, but I don't see it happening today, at least. Um, Women stereotypically do not advocate for themselves in the
Yep.
same way that men would,
Hmm.
especially in the workplace. And so I think we see a lot of women that aren't in positions of power that should be,
Hmm.
who aren't advocating for themselves, or conversely, don't have someone that is advocating for them to pull them up, right? We shouldn't just be pushing ourselves up by ourselves. We should really have someone that's facilitating that from another side. And so another call to action for these local businesses is, what are you doing internally when you hire? Who are you looking to hire?
Mhm.
Are you hiring without bias, without judgment, blindly? Are you looking for a very specific person to fill shoes? Are you looking internally first to see who can we promote from within into a higher level of a higher position of power at this company? So it's tough. I'm glad that we're not incredibly below the average. We're
Yeah.
just 1% off. But I would really love for that to be a focus, particularly because tech has been such an emerging industry in the state of New Hampshire, especially in the last 10 to 15 years.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, and I think as part of that call to action, there are so many nonprofits in New Hampshire that are having STEM programming. Sea Science Center is amazing. It's actually, like, my daughter's favorite place to go. But
Oh, that's
there's so many out there, like, you don't need to reinvent the wheel, like, support the
right.
people who are doing the work. Reach out to your school or your school district, there's always ways to support, and we don't need to be reinventing the wheel. New Hampshire's
Yeah.
full of nonprofits.
Yeah. And we've kind of touched on this, but
Mm,
creating mentorship, networking, and relationship building opportunities is another great way to
mhm,
help women thrive and advance within the tech industry. And particularly if we're looking at entrepreneurship, right? I
mm,
love going to an event, and this has happened multiple times. I love going to an event and meeting someone and telling them my story, and they say to me, "So I've had this idea for like a really long time, and I
yeah,
wanted to do it, but I don't know where to
yeah,
start. But like you make it feel possible." That is my purpose on earth. I think my purpose is to
mhm,
be here to make people think that whatever they want to do is possible. It's as simple as that.
yeah,
And so I think that for women who are in tech, that are in positions at their companies, that whether it's of power or they're still new and they're growing and they're working their way up, go to events
yeah,
and be a mentor, be a resource, create a valuable relationship with another person who
mhm,
wants to get into the field or might want to start their own thing, because that kind of exposure creates connectivity and relatability in a way that is just impossible when you're in a silo by yourself, like, "Oh, I'll never make it, or I'll never get hired, or this company will
mhm.
never look at me because I'm a woman or I'm a person of color or whatever."
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I something I find so shocking because 'cause I'm not in tech, right? I'm used to networking, I'm used to going out, but,
Yeah.
tech is not necessarily the most social networking industry, but I see, especially at our Tech Women events, people will show up for the first time and they're, like, really nervous and all that, and that's great, like, absolutely, I get that, and then they're like, "Oh my god, like, this was so nice to meet these people and chat with these
Mm.
people," and, like, I see it all at all levels of career, like, even the most senior level executives who are, heads down, they've got a full plate, and then they come to an event and they're like, "Oh my goodness." I'm like, "Right, like, we all need this." And you may not get it at your company if you're one 25% of the staff, right? You may not have
Right.
that female connection at any level, depending on what the role is. So I always encourage people to come out and, if anyone ever needs like to be introduced to it, like we are here to make that situation so much more comfortable and introduce
Mhm.
you to some people and the energy, the connection, like people don't realize they're missing it.
Mhm. I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think another really important piece of advocacy is not just advocating for yourself to someone, but reaching out to someone like you and Julie and saying,
Mhm.
"Hey, shot in the dark. I'm looking for a new opportunity in tech. This is my background and skill set. Do you happen to know anyone that might be hiring, or any companies that you feel that they have employees that do this? Because you've got a finger on the pulse of what's happening
Yeah.
in tech in New Hampshire." So for anyone that is watching, if you are in the tech space, which by the way is a very broad definition of tech
Yeah.
technology, um, advocate for yourself in that way as well. It never
Yeah.
hurts to reach out and ask someone. The worst thing that's gonna happen is they're either gonna A, ignore you, intentionally or unintentionally, or
Mhm.
B, they're gonna say, "Ah, I'm so sorry. I don't know anyone. I'm not able to help you at this time." But C, they might be able to help you. And
Yeah.
that's the entire purpose of the Tech Alliance, of
Mhm.
community building, of being
Mhm.
able to tell really enriched stories by connecting with each other, sharing your story with someone to say, "Oh, hey, you know what? I actually know a company that might be looking for exactly what you've got to
Mhm,
offer, whether you're looking for employment, you're looking to be a vendor for someone,
mhm,
you're just looking for an email address to add into your event list, whatever it may be. I want everyone to remember that advocacy is multi pronged.
mhm. Yeah, absolutely, and I think we have seen, and this is what we were talking about networking in New Hampshire, right? Like, if you are out there networking and you're looking for a job, I've seen people walk out of our events with interviews scheduled, like, whoever's in front of your face, right? Like,
Right.
it can't be understated how important it is to get out there and meet people and just share a little bit about yourself. Like, you never know what connection you'll make. And, we always say the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, like in New Hampshire, like you're never more than 3 degrees away from anyone you need to know in New Hampshire. It might be
Yeah.
2 degrees. I'm not even sure it's three, but like it's the opportunity is there. And I hope
Mm.
people take advantage of it because it's really amazing.
Yeah. So, for anyone that is either not familiar with the Tech Alliance or has been considering membership with the Tech Alliance, what's your elevator pitch to them?
We're awesome. Period. No, we're a lot of fun.
Thank you very much for coming to my TED Talk.
Yeah, I mean, we are just here to support the tech industry. We are here to connect the different regions of New Hampshire. This is not going to be elevatory. I'm really sorry, but you know, people in
It's a long
Portsmouth.
ass elevator here,
I know.
Stephanie. We're
I'm really
34
sorry.
floors.
People in Portsmouth don't know what's going on in the Upper Valley. Like we're here, and vice like that goes for all regions. I'm not signaling them out on purpose, but we're here to little bit. We're here to make those connections and support the industry, and we're here to help you find workers. We're here to help get the word out about your product and just anything we can do to help. So we're here to grow the industry. The larger the industry grows, the more people who workers will come, the more businesses will come, the better off we'll all be.
And they all lived happily ever after.
Exactly.
And seen. Stephanie, thank you so much. I love chatting with you. I love your passion for everything that you're doing. I appreciate the Tech Alliance more than you know. For everyone watching, if you are interested in learning more about the New Hampshire Tech Alliance or the wonderful Stephanie Baxter, they will both be tagged on LinkedIn. Please reach out to them and connect. Thank you so much for tuning into The Mill. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Rachel.